right, welcome to today's webinar. Okay, so today we've got a topic, prepare your firm for sale. And so I think this is one that I think a lot of people in firms, owners of firms, looking at this, I think could really find a lot of value in this. So let's go through a few administrative things and then we'll get right into our topic. I'm going to facilitate today's session. My name is Tom Wadelton. I'm a virtual CFO with Summit CPA Group. I've got about 20 clients. I act as their business consultant and as their CFO. And have done this for several years with Summit CPA Group. So a few administrative things. So we do have, this is a 1 credit hour class. Attend the entire 50-minute session. I will launch 3 different polling questions. I probably won't announce when those are being launched, but you need to answer all 3 of those. CP certificates will be emailed people who meet that within the next week. We do have a question function, so people are muted during the call, but please use the question function. We'll answer as many of those questions actually during the call, either live or by typing during the session. And I know we've got at least one area that we're going to ask people specifically to give us answers for things. So both if you have questions for us during the call or during this webinar or responding to that, please use that function. And then one of the most common questions that I get is there a copy of the slides and can I get a copy of these? So we didn't send out slides ahead of time, so they're not available right now, but people will get those emailed to them after. Okay, so I mentioned Summit CPA Group, so let me tell you just a little bit more about us. We did start as a traditional firm back in 2002. Since 2004, we've been offering VCFO services and back office services to our clients. That's been our main area of focus. In 2013, we went fully distributed, got rid of the office, entirely remote firm, tons of flexibility with employees and also with our clients. And then as of last year, almost exactly a year ago, we joined Anders CPA and Advisors. And so now we're a merged company. We're now the virtual CFO team at Anders. And so advisors, and then we've got hybrid work as there's an office and hybrid workers in St. Louis in the Anders team, and our team remains a virtual team. Okay, so we're gonna hear from Brannon today. I'll show a picture in a second, but he is founder of both Poe Group and Advisors and also the Accounting Practice Academy. Brannon has been selling firms since 2003, focusing on CPA firms, is a CPA and also worked in Ernst & Young early in his career. So Brannon, welcome today. Really
Thanks.
Excited to hear about the topic. You want to go ahead and launch us in and talk about your company and then also preparing your firm to sell?
Yes, so Poe Group Advisors is our main company, and we broker CPA firms all over US and Canada. We also sell non-CPA firms. Accounting Practice Academy, we're in our 4th year running with that, and that is a virtual workshop for firm owners to help them do a lot of the strategies that we'll talk about today, but just to build a better firm. And yeah, I would love to start this first question, because I think when you think about building a better firm, and think about it in terms of your house. You know, it's interesting when you put your house on the market and you start to think about how's a buyer going to look at this house. It's no different with your business. So is the chat open, Tom? Can we get some chats?
I would ask people to use the question function. The Q&A function is where I'd like people to put that.
I would love, and you can be funny if you want. How do you think a buyer would see your firm? Just throw up some comments.
Okay, I'll tell you as these come in.
Get people thinking about that question.
Mm-hmm.
Are you getting any comments yet? Don't be shy.
Not yet. And I would like people to answer whether they are the owner of the firm or a member or a company, because we would have some people who aren't necessarily with the firm in here.
All right. We'll
Yeah, so John said he's an owner. John, I would love to hear you say how people would view your firm.
I think the owners, sometimes they lose that perspective. You know, you're in it day to day. You work hard in your business. You feel like you might be a little detached from what it's actually worth and what people would see in it as good and bad.
Yeah, we're starting to get answer. I think people may have misunderstood the question. I'm getting lots of questions, people telling me that they're owners. So the question is, how would a buyer see your firm, not what your role is in the firm?
Yep. All right, we're getting some.
So I would believe our firm would be looked on as a professional, clean, and progressive. Another one says, I'm an owner, but too small / personally involved. Mishmash of clients and services. Those are all the ones that we have so far.
Okay, that's good. That's good. That's a pretty nice little variety of answers. You got somebody that feels like they've got it together, and some people realize they've got some work to do. Owner-centric.
Buyer would see too many 1040s at too low of pricing.
All right.
Let's see, sold one, now building one. I'm an owner. One just said I would see it as an asset.
Okay. All right. We can keep moving.
Okay.
I just wanted to kind of get the question going, get people thinking about that, because that little shift can be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So can we go to the next slide?
Yes, sure. And I can go ahead and launch the first polling question too. Yep, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So, people mentioned some things that might not be ideal. So let's talk about what is ideal. And we've got these points, and I can see the poll there.
Yep.
So the first one, really the first and second one, I think are at the top of the list for a reason. So we see so many CPA firm owners be so heavily involved in their own practices, working 2,500 plus hours a year sometimes, and just really everything comes to the owner. The owner is the bottleneck, or some of the partners are the bottleneck of the firm. So what we want to see is where that's not the case, where we want to see that the owner can take off a significant amount of time, have most of the things dealt with by staff. Profitability is attractive, so that profitability, I can actually give you sort of a benchmark target for firms. I'd say for firms under 3 million in annual revenue, a good target is 50% of top line revenue. And I know that's sometimes seems like a lofty goal, but we've seen it happen. So I feel like it's a good goal. Mm-hmm. When firms get over that $3 million mark, we do see that come down, just because the production of the owner comes down as the firm grows. So that margin is naturally sort of starts to fall.
Brandon, for those smaller firms, are you including the owner's pay and salary in that 50%?
Yes.
You are.
Yes.
Okay.
It's sort of like an EBITDA, where you add back owner compensation.
Okay.
Team and culture. So there are some things that you can observe. There's some observable things about team and culture. Longevity of staff, friendliness of staff. Is there a lack of drama in the office, or those things are important. And when you sell, it's important to find a good fit for that, right? That's probably one of the most important things that you need to consider with the acquiring firm and the selling firm. Mm-hmm. No competitive threats or major obstacles. We see sometimes key staff can be a potential threat to a practice, especially if an owner has made some verbal promises to sort of dangled the carrot for ownership, and then shows up one day and says, "Hey, here's your new owner." And there could be a competitive threat if that person could go out, has client relationships, could go out and start a competing firm, or join a competing firm and pull clients. One of the things we always recommend is try to get a non-solicitation, non-compete agreement with key staff when you hire them. That's just a good practice to have in your employment contracts and agreements.
Sure.
Processes and systems. I think accountants are probably heavily focused on processes and systems, especially with new tech. And those things are important for obvious reasons. It's just easier for someone to take over a firm that's well documented. It's easier to follow and understand those.
Yeah.
And then, go ahead. Sorry.
Nope. Go ahead.
And then that last point is like the seller is clear about what they want. Mm-hmm. That really does make a difference when buyers and sellers start to talk, if there's uncertainty or wishy-washiness about what the seller wants to do, that can sort of be a turnoff for buyers.
Brannon, is there any particular area when someone is not clear, sort of what's the big decision people are not making? I mean, I'm thinking of things like how involved they want to be in the firm going forward, or how much cash they want versus, are there any particular ones where you're like, this always seems to be the one that people haven't thought through?
I think it's just a lack of motivation. So what happens is a buyer is having a conversation with a seller and they just don't seem all that interested. And it's just that lack of clarity. Buyers sort of sense it, and it turns them off, because we have a saying in our industry, time kills deals. And if a seller's dragging his or her feet, and there's maybe some of the information is not presented as clearly as it should, and they're slow to get back, and it just bogs down the deal. And
okay, before we go on, let me go ahead and share the results of the first poll that you should be able to see. The results are up on the screen. So a fairly split right across the what's the likelihood of that happening, and a little bit less than half the people are saying that they think there's better than a 50% chance in the next 3 years. Is that, I'm curious your reaction to that distribution.
Well, I'm curious about this too. I think it just reflects the audience to a certain degree. I think if you layered this with age, you'd probably see a big correlation, right? So if your audience is a lot of modern firms, that might be a lot of younger people that really aren't thinking about selling. However, I would say to those people, building your firm with the end in mind is really a smart thing to do. Before we came on, Tom and I were talking about remodeling a house, and you can remodel a house right before you put it on the market, but what if you'd done that 5 or 10 years before, and you could enjoy the house and then sell it? And it's the same thing with a firm. The things that you do that make it more attractive to the market will make it more attractive for you to own as well.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to let you get to your next slide.
Yeah. So one of the first things we talked about, that motivation. Timing is often the first question someone thinking about selling has to figure out. Like, when do they want to sell? And that's the first thing you have to answer. It's also sometimes the people struggle with that the most. It's just a hard thing. It's a big change of life if retirement is what's happening next. That is a big change in life. And I think it's really smart to get clear about what your exit goal is. Are you exiting to start another company? Are you exiting in order to retire? And also, what's important in your exit? What is a successful exit? Is it getting top dollar? For some people, that's really not their key motivator. Their key motivator might be, I really want one of my key people to step up and take over the firm, and I'm more interested in them doing well and this being a successful business for them than I am about my own financial well-being, because maybe they've made enough money and it's just not a hot top concern. So it's just good to be clear about what you really want. And it's okay to want several things. You can want to do well by your clients and well by your staff, and also want the right price and terms.
Sure.
But again, it's just being clear is helpful.
Yeah, I mentioned one of my clients sold their business, and it wasn't a CPA practice earlier this year, but to them, they felt really close to their employees, and that was their top pieces. They wanted someone coming in that company was going to continue with a similar culture. And like you said, he definitely had a money goal and things like that, but he kept reiterating that I want the right buyer, that I want to know that my employees are well taken care of after I leave.
Yeah. And ironically, we find that the people who focus on those things end up getting a better price.
Interesting.
Because, if you focus on the fit, right? If you focus on making sure it's a good fit, then the buyer's going to see that it's a good fit for them, and they're going to be more motivated and more willing to pay what the firm is worth.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. All right. So great place to start if you're thinking about making some major changes in your firm or thinking about getting it ready to put on the market, is really understanding what it's worth. And that's just a great place to start. We have a couple of ways that you can kind of learn about market value. On our website, we have a free pricing report, and we can also offer some estimates, but it's a great place to start. These are the things that we look at when we're looking at value of a firm. And I like to mention the concept of number of potential buyers. So if you think of what is the universe of possible buyers that might want to buy this business, if it's a large universe, you're likely to get a better selection of buyers. So you're likely to have a higher chance of getting a right fit buyer or several right fit buyers, which leads to higher price and terms. So when I'm talking about these items, it's important to think about that number of potential buyers. And location is probably the easiest example for people to understand. So if you're in a large metropolitan area, you're going to have more buyers. Like if let's say it's Atlanta, Georgia, or Los Angeles, those markets are going to have a lot of firms. So they're going to have a lot of potential buyers just right there in your backyard. Versus a very rural practice, if you go to a small town in Kansas, for instance, with a population of 20,000 people, your number of buyers is going to shrink dramatically. Virtual firms, which your firm is, are location agnostic. So the universe of buyers is much larger, and we do see premiums for virtual firms. Again, the size of the business. So if you think of a practice that's 10 million, there are going to be fewer buyers than a practice that's $1 million. The number of people that can handle that firm and get financing for it is a much larger number for the $1 million practice. How you market the firm, that's where we come in. We have a large database of buyers. Profitability is a pretty obvious one. The more money you make, the more desirable the firm is, the more people are going to want it and pay for it. Mix of services. So this is a big one too, because there are certain things that buyers don't want. Like if you have a practice, and let's say you're doing a small amount of audit work. Let's say it's 10% of your practice is audit work. Well, I would say for a smaller CPA firm, most buyers don't want to do audit work. So you've just taken a large part of that market and made your practice sort of off limits for that. So we'll talk about segments a little bit in a minute. Sometimes the right answer is to completely get rid of segments to get your firm ready for sale.
Brannon, back to the size, we got a question that said, what's related to firm size, where do you start seeing it become more difficult to sell? And then a set follow-up question on what is the sweet spot?
That's a great question. I think it's moving a little bit. I would say the sweet spot is probably between 750 and 2 million in annual revenue. And then once you get over 2 and 3, then then it's a different sort of buyer. We were talking earlier about private equity. We're seeing a lot more private equity in the marketplace. So I think that's shifting a little bit because of the private equity buyers. They typically want something a little bit bigger so that, that has more staff, so they don't have to get involved with it. So I think that's shifting a little bit.
Okay.
Employees, staffing is becoming a big issue in this profession. I hear it more and more, when I talk with CPAs on a daily basis. I'm hearing the difficulty of finding good talent. So having good talent in a practice. We've got a practice for sale in Canada right now that's got over 50 staff, and we are essentially making that a key marketing aspect of marketing this firm. Is sort of selling that, hey, this has a great long-term staff, very capable team, and that becomes much more desirable. A lot of CPAs are selling to ask me, does the buyer going to want to keep my staff? Most of the time, yes. 99% of the time, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then clients, quality of clients, quality of fees. And then the last thing is terms. And most of our deals are fixed price terms. So there's typically a correlation. If you want a higher price, if you're willing to sacrifice terms, if you're willing to introduce contingencies into the deal or large amounts of seller financing into the deal, then that will increase the price. Most sellers want cash, so they don't have to really worry about it. A lot of the private equity deals are coming in with a two-stage process where there's a cash outlay at the closing, and then there's a second bite of the apple if the firm meets certain growth goals. And I think that can be a really good solution for a fast-growing type of firm where the owner realizes there's a lot of growth potential and can help make that happen. Just needs a capital partner. And so terms is another consideration on price.
Here's a question that might be kind of hard to answer. It says, what is the typical term?
Yeah, that depends on the size. That depends on a lot of different things.
Sure.
Let's say it's just a $1 million practice that's in pretty good shape. That most of the firms would qualify for SBA lending. So a lot of these deals are financed through SBA, and they offer 10-year financing on firms. And usually the buyer only has to have a 10% injection. So there's good financing. Sometimes there's a standby note on those loans. So depending on the strength of the buyer, the seller might have to do a standby note for about 15% of the purchase price. Those are pretty common. And usually that standby note is 2-year no payment, and then maybe a 5-year payment after that. And sometimes they'll waive that after a certain period of time. So I don't know if I answered that question well.
No, that feels like a really good answer with some specifics in it. Okay, as we go to the next, I'll go ahead and launch the next polling question.
Okay.
As we get into this one.
All right. Let's see the poll there.
Good.
So I'm gonna minimize this on my screen so I can see that. So
okay,
yeah, no, you're good. 3 areas to have the biggest impact on the value. Number 1 is pricing. Like it has so many ripple effects throughout if you're only going to focus on one thing, I would probably focus on pricing. And these are things that can be done a year before you sell. They can be done as late as that. I think you're helping yourself if you can make these improvements 2, 3, 4 years before you sell. But most CPAs that I talk with are probably of the mindset that pricing is that clients are very price sensitive. And our experience has been that that's really not the case. They're more service sensitive than they are price sensitive. Now, there are price sensitive clients, and there are clients that will leave because of price, but usually it's a much smaller number of clients than people think. Our philosophy on pricing is it's experimentation process. Like there's not a paint by numbers answer here. But that's Like if you just want to focus on one thing, that would be it. Staffing issues, these are better corrected long before. Like if you have someone on the team that's just not good for the team and they're bringing everyone around them down and they're causing a lot of stress for the owner, you need to get that corrected. Usually, ideally 2-3 years before you want to sell. If you've got some players on the team that just really are toxic, you need to get them out. Because if you try to do that right before a closing, it can, they can make things difficult.
Sure. Yeah. And don't count on the buyer to be doing that for you, right? Don't count on them wanting to come in and fire the poor performers.
Right. Or even a good performer that's just dangerous, that's doing something they shouldn't be doing, like I don't know, like doing work on the side and starting a little practice on the side. I've seen a lot of horror stories on that.
Okay.
And then lastly, where are you putting your attention? Are you putting out fires every day? Are you just taking the problems as they come? Or are you truly prioritizing your top clients and making sure that they are being very well served? Because usually there's a lot of opportunity within a practice for additional services, advisory services, CFO, controllership services with top clients. And there are a lot of firms that they're so busy putting out fires and dealing with the day-to-day that they ignore these people. We had one member of our accounting practice academy. It's a very well-run firm, but when they started analyzing which staff were being assigned to which clients, they had it all backwards. They had their top clients were sort of assigned to their less than top staffers. And so they corrected that. And guess what? You get more referrals from those people when you do stuff like that. You get more business from those people when you do that. And people refer sort of laterally or below, typically. So if you've got a small client that you might not even want to serve, and they give you referrals, they're probably going to be similar referrals. And vice versa. Yeah. A clients refer A clients.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Sounds really simple. I mean, these things are so simple, right? They should be easy to do, right? So why don't they get done? What's holding everyone back? So that let's talk about that. Let's go to the next slide. And
okay. Yeah.
So I think, I think our mindsets often are more, like, let's grow this business. Let's take on more clients. Let's grow. And what we find is that most of the people that I speak with, or the owners, are busier than they want to be. There are certainly some really smart people who figured out how to have a really good work schedule and balance in their life. But most practices, when they get to that point, more is actually not helpful. And so this is counterintuitive, but often the first thing you need to do if you want to change your firm or improve it is start by pruning, because you don't have any capacity, right? And so if you have zero capacity, you really can't make change happen. That's what sucks you back into the day-to-day. And so what we always try to tell people, I had this CPA, this younger CPA, call me years ago, 5-6 years ago. And he said, I want to sell my firm. And I said, okay. And he's a younger person. I'm like, what are you going to do next? And he said, I don't know. I love what I do. I really like, serving clients. I like doing the advisory stuff. He said, but I hadn't had, I'm just burned out. And I said, well, when was the last time you took a really proper vacation? Like, when did you go somewhere and not work? And he's like, it's been years. And I said, well, this is going to be counterintuitive, but my advice is go ahead and book something. Like, find some time on the calendar, take a week off. Don't do any work. Don't even take your computer. Just go somewhere and then come back and see if you really still want to sell your business. And he kept it. He's still in practice. And
interesting.
He was just burned out. And what happened was he got a lot of clarity when he came back from the vacation, and he made some pretty major changes. He got rid of some clients. He got rid of some problem clients, and decided to really change his vision and go into a different direction. And he has done those things.
And he was probably a better looking sales target after he decided not to sell and did those things, right?
Yeah. Well, too, it's a little bit of a red flag when someone says, I want to sell my business, but I love what I do. Like,
sure.
Wait a minute, it sounds like you just need to fix some things. So, and a lot of times we don't try to talk people into selling if they're not ready to sell, because we've learned the hard way. We can put their practice on the market, but if they're not ready, they're not going to sell.
Yeah, sure.
So, and we've got, actually, there's a tool at accountingpracticeacademy.com. On our resources page, there's a free letter to let go of clients if anyone has any clients they might not want to keep working with.
That's great. That's probably a step that people need. What's that initial nudge that people, and my guess, I know from my own experience, and we haven't had that many clients that we have let go. I can't think of any case though when we have that someone said we shouldn't have done that. It was usually we should have done it sooner, and I didn't realize how much of my kind of mind bandwidth that client was taking until they were gone. I didn't have to do it.
Yeah, it's the energy, right? It's like they take your energy, and they take your staff's energy. We had a client a couple of years ago, and they did this really interesting thing where they would pull all the staff into a meeting, and they would say, okay, we want to know all the clients you want to let go of. We're going to have they called it their voting off the island party. And they would come in and they would wear like their Hawaiian, their
Survivor t-shirts, right?
Their island stuff, and they would have the vote them off the island party. And that really energized the whole team.
And would they follow through? They would choose some.
They would.
Really let them go?
They would. They would let them go. They wouldn't let them all go, but I mean, they would listen, and sometimes there would be a reassignment, or but a lot of them got let go.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, you ready to go on to the next slide?
Yeah, I want to mention the segments. Like I mentioned that earlier, but sometimes if you're dabbling in anything, do an analysis to see if you're really making the money you think you are on that segment. If you're doing 5 audits, or if you're doing a small amount of wealth management, if you're doing those tack-ons that sound like they're fun, and then you go a couple of years and they don't really take off like you thought, it might be best to just take them out back and shoot them, because it's my experience has been, once that segment is either sold off or let go of, the practice scales in a much cleaner way and faster after that.
Makes a lot of sense.
Pricing power. I think CPAs right now have more pricing power than they ever had. The staff shortages have created a market where a lot of firms are not taking new clients. And, unfortunately, too many firm owners are underpricing their services. And I think this has been pretty problematic in the profession for quite some time. And first of all, we do like the value billing model. Love the subscription model. I don't know if that's what you guys do, Tom, but
it is, yes.
That's, in our opinion, that's the way to go. But one thing, if you're not sure if you think you might be underpricing, you probably are. And the easy way to find out is on new clients. So somebody comes in, wants to be a new client, that's where you can experiment with much higher pricing.
Mhm.
And so if the new clients are willing to pay and they're not batting an eye, then guess what? You're not charging enough. And then you can start to roll out price increases within your practice. But that gives you, a lot of times that will give the owner the confidence to realize, yeah, we're cutting ourselves short on pricing.
So Brannon, one of the comments someone made when the initial question, how would someone see your firm? And they said too many 1040s at a low price. I'm curious, and maybe not necessarily the 1040s, but when a potential buyer is coming in looking at a low price, how are they looking at that? I've got in my mind kind of what they would think, but when they look and say, yeah, you're pricing too low, how do they view that?
A lot of times it's sort of a deal breaker. It's like, those are not good clients. That's not the kind of firm that I want. They back away from the deal.
Okay.
Whereas others realize that, if they've been good at implementing price increases in their career in the past, and they realize they can do it fairly easily, it won't be as big of a problem. And in fact, it's kind of seeing the practice as a little bit of a fixer-upper.
Okay. That's what I was thinking, is just my common sense was saying, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to come in, I need to raise these prices maybe 50%. I'm going to have a lot of immediately unhappy clients or clients leaving by saying, wow, as soon as it switched from Brannon CPA firm to Tom CPA firm, everything went to hell, and I don't want to deal with that, is how I think I would be looking at it.
Yeah. I think I will say we did a podcast with a guy named Jason Ding a few years ago, and Jason bought a firm that was very much a fixer-upper.
Okay.
And he went up pretty dramatically on price, but he explained himself. He said, yeah, he went to the clients and he said, look, I know this is how much you used to pay. I'm going to have to charge this. However, this is the service level that you can expect. And he didn't lose very many clients at all.
Wow. Okay. Impressive.
So, yeah. Unplug vacations. So I mentioned this earlier, and I'm a big believer. I've been a business owner since 2003, 20 years. I actually wrote a book called The Unplugged Vacation, which is linked here. And it's just, life's too short. Like you need time with your family. You need time for yourself. You need to get distance from the practice. And I think here again, it's like the mindset is important. It's like the hourly billing mindset versus the value billing mindset. The hourly billing mindset is time equals money, right? And so anytime you're not working, well, you're missing out. You're creating scarcity for yourself, right? And so I think the mindset around vacations needs to be a little bit different. And the mindset is like, hey, I'm a big asset for my firm. I own this place. I'm an asset that I need to take care of. Just as you need to take care of your team, you need to take care of your own energy and your own, and so look at vacation as a source of rejuvenation, not as being lazy or anything other than that. But I see so many people take their laptops and they take their phones. That's not a vacation. That's not rejuvenating. You might as well be at work. You're just working at the beach instead of at home or at the office. So
I've got a comment that resonated with Paul, who said he realized he has your book on his desk and he's committed to read it this week. Good. Do you want to say a word about vacations, about the impact when you do unplug, about having your staff step up and show that the firm can run without you? Is that another element you need to unplug?
It's definitely a big element. What happens before the vacation usually is a lot of delegations, especially if you take a long one. I took a 3-week European trip a few years ago. Did not check email. I checked in the office once. I made one phone call in the office.
Wow.
And what happens prior to that is you have to get ready, right? You have to tell your clients you're going away. And you have to delegate a lot of things to your team so that things can be handled. You also basically tell your team, hey, look, step up. If you think you can solve a problem, take a stab at it and try to solve the problem. So I think there's a lot of team development that happens when you're away from the office. And then also you kind of see where you might have some work to do. If things don't go quite like you thought when you get back, it's probably not the end of the world, but it kind of opens your eyes to some things that you might need to work on or that your team needs to work on. There's so many benefits to it. It's and the book really does a pretty thorough job at looking at it from all angles. But if you're looking at it again, back to the first question today is, how would a buyer see my firm? I had a firm that we sold in Alberta a few years ago, and the top line revenue was about $2.5 million. One owner firm, cash flow to owner was almost 50%, and he took about 3 months off a year. So
impressive.
Yeah, when you can go to market and say, this cash flow, this time off, it's very, very attractive.
That's great.
In contrast, I work 3,000 hours a year. I work every Saturday and some Sundays. It's a different,
Yeah. I know who I'd rather be.
Yeah, exactly. The other way to get capacity, right, is you hire and delegate. People, we have another tool, free tool here on this link. And the tool is really simple. So you get people to say, what kind of work do I want to keep? What would I like to delegate one day? And what would I like to get rid of right away? And we've done this on our team. Is we'll go into a conference room, we'll set a timer for like 20 minutes, have everybody fill it out, and then talk about what duties we want to get off of our plate. And it's amazing how much administrative burden people put on their professional staff. And so often you might not need to hire professional staff. You might just need to be moving work around to optimize what people are focusing on. And of course, automation and technology come in here. But the thing is too, is like, what if you can free up your team, then they can free you up, because they may want to advance. One of your staff might want to really be a good reviewer, and they're not doing any review work, and maybe the owner's doing all the review work, and you've got somebody right there on your team that wants to step up. If you can just find a way to free them up, then they can free you up.
Yeah, great example.
And like really looking at what people are working on probably needs to be revised or analyzed once a year. Like, what are people? Because if people are growing, and think about this too, if staff are growing, if they're continually going on to new things and letting go of old things, that's going to be a much more attractive, a challenging job for a player that they want to be challenged.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, on a shorter frame, I do get those calls like, I need to sell. Like, when do you want to sell? Well, June would be good. Next month would be good. Well, it might not happen that fast. It might happen that fast, but probably not. So let's say you got a year to fix up your practice. What should you do? And if you go to the next slide, we'll have some answers for you. So some of it's just like, I call it curb appeal. If you have a virtual firm, it's no different. It's how does the practice look? Does it look organized? If you walk into the owner's office, are there stacks of files all on the floor piled up in the office? Does it look disorganized? Does it if you have a physical office, does it look fresh? Is the carpeting okay? Is the paint okay? Like, cosmetics matter. Bring the books up to date. So like, if you've got a lot of old accounts receivable, clean that up, collect that. Even though most buyers don't buy accounts receivable, it does tell a story, right? If you've got a lot of slow paying clients, they can turn into no paying clients, things like that.
Sure.
So beyond just that sort of cosmetic stuff, which can happen really quickly, it goes back to the three things that I said really move the needle very well, and that's pricing, correcting staffing issues, and focusing on your top clients. I've coached a lot of. Someone said they have too many 1040s. I've coached a lot of people potentially selling to dramatically go up on freestanding 1040 returns pricing. To give you an idea of pricing here, I talked with a CPA who sold his firm in the Northeast, and he was working on creating basically a 1040 machine. He wants to do 50 to 60,000 returns a year. And the way he's going to do it is he's going to outsource all the data entry to the Philippines. And then he'll automate a lot of things, right? There'll be a lot of automation, and the review will be done in the United States. So there'll be a high quality tax return product. He said, the model doesn't work unless I charge at least $500 a return. So even a highly efficient, highly automated, outsourced model, you can't make that model work without charging $500 right now. So what does that tell you about a traditional CPA firm with 1040 work? Your cost is a lot higher than on that model that I just described. So most people are probably underpricing on 1040s. A lot of the people, So pricing is probably the big one. All right, making change happen. How are we on time? We're kind of coming up here, aren't we?
We are. We've got a few more minutes.
All right, so FTIs, failure to implement, is what that stands for. So it's true with any kind of human behavior. You're going to have a tendency to fall into a trap. The easiest way to think about it is probably weight loss. If anyone's ever tried to lose weight, it's very easy to fall back into your old eating habits. So I think awareness of what those are is important. For a firm owner, it might just be their biggest FDI is they can't let go of stuff. Growing a business and changing a business is really a series of letting go. It's not about taking on more. It's actually about shedding, doing less and less, and letting that role evolve. But one of the interesting exercises we do in Accounting Practice Academy is have people try to identify and reflect on their past history of when they've successfully done some sort of change in their life, and when they have failed at change in their life, and look at those patterns that exist and try to identify what their FTIs are.
Sounds like really good self-awareness. For someone to go through and understand that personal behavior.
So once you know what those are, then you can more effectively strategize to change despite your FTIs.
Sounds great.
All right, are we at the top of the? Here we go.
We are, and we have gotten through all of our questions. So if people have last minute questions as we start to exit here, get those in. I will go ahead and show you. Let me end the poll here, and you can tell me if you're surprised by these results. So which of the ideal, you said here are some of the ideal elements, and which ones you think would be the biggest, which ones do apply? Is it not owner-centric, things like that? I'm curious to let you look at this and see what you think.
Yeah, it's good. Profitability is good. Good profitable firms here, 44% like the profitability and culture. So those are good.
Looks like owner-centric would be the one that's the lowest on here, which is the one you spend a lot of time talking about.
It's the one I see the most, is like they just can't get out of the day-to-day stuff. Yeah.
So Brandon, you have a resource. Let's see, what is the average percent of profitability that's attractive? I think you've already answered that.
50% is the goal. Anything above 50 on a smaller firm is great.
Yeah.
And
if people want to learn more, you have a resource that's going to be coming out.
Yes, we're really excited people can go ahead and pre-order a copy. It will be released this summer. We're hoping it'll be released in late June. It may be July, but it's coming soon. It's a book, and you can go and pre-register for it. It'll be an ebook. We'll also have physical copies. And yeah, we're super excited about this. And I feel like the industry, there's even if you have a great firm, there's always things that you can do to make it better.
Sure. Yeah, this sounds great. Okay, we're going to sneak in a couple last questions. Is your profitability vision different between Canada and the US? I assume that's in reference to the 50%. Is it much different that you see across there?
I think from what I've seen, there are a lot more profitable Canadian firms than our US firms.
Oh, so
I feel
maybe the
like
expectation may be a little bit higher in Canada?
I don't know. I think the expectations from a buyer's perspective is probably very similar, but I I don't know why it is. It might be a cultural thing, but a lot of the firms I work with in Canada, they do a better job of taking time off and letting go.
Mm, okay, good. Okay, and the very last one, John asked, is the typical 1.25 sales price still the norm? Do you have any rough estimates to tell people, hey, here's sort of a rule of thumb you can do when it comes to pricing?
I mean, we see a range. I think the real industry rule of thumb for cash deals is probably around 1x. For a firm that's very profitable with low owner hours in a metropolitan area, we'll go for 1.25. We've seen cloud firms go for even higher multiples.
Okay.
So virtual firms are probably trending much higher than traditional firms in terms of pricing. So
Okay.
yeah, it's not a bad rule of thumb, depending on.
Yeah, you gave some of the things at the beginning around location and market and things so people could get that gauge of, does that put me above that kind of one or below, being realistic about the number of demand for buyers.
Right.
Okay. So a couple more things to go through that I have. So we hope people want to keep learning. We do have the Modern CPA Success Show that I and Adam Hale facilitate. And so a general set of topics where we talk to people in firms, people in service, people in sort of the client space. So I'm hoping people want to learn using that. We also have a CFO community on Slack. So a bunch of topics related to being a virtual CFO or playing that CFO role, more interactive if people want to interact with us that way. And if people actually are really interested in getting into the CFO work, we have a playbook. So this is a pretty intensive course with 15 modules, but we will take you through everything that we do to provide CFO services to a client. As you finish that, there's a coaching session that Adam and I facilitate with someone to help them with how they would want to get implemented. We also have a weekly meeting with a group of people who have gone through that course who want to learn more. And so we're sharing ideas. We give out our pricing tool, different models. We give some discounts and things like that. So really, we think it's everything that could set someone up to be offering those kind of services. And then finally, if you hear all that and say, yeah, but I would just rather join you, we would love to hear from you. We talked about the challenges of getting talent. We are also looking for really talented people and would love to find those. Brannon, thank you very much. This has been really educational. I know one of the surveys, about 80% of the people today were firm owners, a pretty high percent, not surprising for this kind of topic. But hopefully this really spoke to people about whether they're in the short term wanting to sell or just saying, how do I build a better practice so that long term, it's very attractive. He gave us some really good tips and look forward to the book, and maybe people want to contact you directly and just say, just work with me to get that done.
Thank you, Tom. This has been a lot of fun. I hope people got a lot of value from today. And thanks for facilitating.
Yep, very happy to do it. Okay, I hope everyone online has a great day, and we will talk to people soon. Take care.